over at bangthebook.com. We are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. Lots of great stuff going on over there right now, as always, including my week 1 college football power ratings. We've got division previews for the NFL from Danny Vorgs, looking at his projected spreads based on his model. 58% lifetime on those picks from Danny Vorgs over at bangthebook.com. That's across sides and totals. We've got a preview for this weekend's Xfinity Series event. We had another golf preview from James Mazzola for the Tour Championship. He's hit back-to-back outright winners, so you definitely want to follow along with that article as the weekend plays out here. Lots of great stuff in Major League Baseball, WNBA, additional college football, and NFL content. All kinds of things available over at bangthebook.com. If you've missed anything here this week on Bang the Book Radio, lots of shelf life for all these football topics that we've been discussing. So you can head on back, check those out. We're on iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts. Really, wherever you look for us, you're definitely going to find Bang the Book Radio there. As you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB and the number 200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. On today's program, we'll have Christian Pina from the Sports Gambling Podcast. He'll join me to chat some Major League Baseball and some college football. Second half of today's show, Brent, the head risk manager down at DSI Sportsbook, will join us. He'll talk about sharp action in the futures markets for both the NFL and college football. Talk about what his job entails, then also some sharp action here for week 0 and week 1 of the college football season. With that, we'll bring on today's leadoff hitter. That is Mr. Christian Pina of the Sports Gambling Podcast. Christian, how's it going today, man?
Good, buddy. A little bit of a different flavor for us, right? We're checking out some UFC with the little break, which I'm not going to lie to you is very nice. Now we get to talk about the other side of the coin, man. So excited to talk with you as always.
Yeah, man, good to chat with you here about some baseball and some college football stuff. And I got to say, man, this baseball season wore me down. I've officially thrown in the towel here with football coming up. Want to make sure I've got my full focus on our football content here at Bang the Book and also the contest entries I have and my personal bankroll and stuff like that. But you're still rolling strong with baseball here deep into the second half.
Yeah, man, it's really weird. The second half has notoriously been where I've always had my strongest, the strongest time of year for me when it comes to baseball. And a big part of that is kind of what I call prospect hunting. And look, it's the one area I feel that you can really have there's a couple of them, but one of the biggest you can have is an advantage over an odds maker is when you talk about these prospects when they're coming up and how mispriced that they really have been. I mean, you look around and, Zach Gallen being priced as a 130 underdog is absolutely crazy because odds makers really don't know how to price these up-and-coming prospects when they come up from AA. Not only that, but then they get, in many cases in AAA beat around in the hitter-happy PCL with a juice ball, and, their numbers look a lot worse than they really are. So the second half to me has always been really where I've been able to, kind of get that advantage. Ponce de Leon coming up last year, Alex Reyes. Whenever these guys kind of come up, they're not exactly priced as they should be, and as especially, the top tier of prospects, the Forrest Whitleys of the world that'll be up, Honeywell before he went out, all these guys that come up, their markets are just not priced, especially in their first couple starts until they kind of odds makers know what they're dealing with a little bit. So it's really a fascinating kind of back and forth when you talk about the second half of baseball instead of the first, where you're largely going on what teams were instead of what they are.
Well, and typically for me, May through August had been the best months for me. I've generally gotten off to a little bit of a slower start in April, and then in September you get all these call-ups. You get a lot of unproven relievers pitching in high leverage, these different types of situations. September's always been worse for me, and maybe it coincides with football. But, this year I even, just cut my losses because it wasn't a great baseball season for me. And I know you and I have had this discussion in private off the air before. I'm a regression analysis handicapper using a lot of Sabermetrics. I generally need a lot of sample size for that type of handicapping. And in a lot of instances this year, those situations just didn't really work out for me. And heading into 2020, I'm going to change a lot of different things. But in terms of your baseball handicapping strategy, Christian, and what has worked for you, what goes into a handicap for you?
Yeah, man, it's funny you say that. I know we've kind of gone back and forth busting each other's chops a little bit of this. And look, I am very, very different when it comes to most professional bettors than my philosophy when it comes to Major League Baseball. Even in other sports much like the NFL or college, look, the thought process of Sabermetrics is great. I am a big fan of keeping it simple and eliminating variance. I really am. And so when a guy says his xFIP is this and his Sierra is this and his hard rate hit contact is this, great. Some guys defy expectations and they're just going to win. Dakota Hudson comes to mind, Brandon Woodruff, you name it. Some of these guys, they're going to defy it, and they're going to defy it for an entire season. We saw this with Giolito. I'm not going to bet on a guy 4 times just to win the 5th because he's an underdog, even though and the other side, either whether it's positive regression or negative regression, I'm just not going to do it to go 1-4 and say, look how smart I am. I hit a plus 140 underdog. It's never going to work like that for me. I just am not going to give up those losses en route to trying to ride a guy. The outlining factors are there. And much like when we talk about UFC, when it comes to baseball, I eliminate as much variance as possible. So 90%, maybe 80% now of my plays are in the first 5 market. I really look into kind of the trend data and I bet it every single time. If a pitcher is, great at home, Kyle Hendricks, that's pitching today, comes to mind. I'm going to bet him every single time first 5 because I don't want the variance of bullpens. And the other thing is, the offense is largely variant, and I know a pitcher can definitely go out there and have a bad start, but the baseline that you should expect with that. So there's a ton of different stuff that goes into my long-term buying and selling of guys for sure. Some of it's home road splits, whatever it is. But once I determine I'm either going to sell for the entire season, first 5, or buy, it really it makes plays not as subjective. And I've been able to kind of evolve the game into the more niche markets that people aren't necessarily looking when it comes to the K-props, all that type of stuff as well. And again, those are all kind of long-term based on, some formulas and stuff, long-term sells or buys, whether you're talking over or under on K-props.
I mean, I still believe in the Sabermetrics, and it is something I'm still going to incorporate into my handicapping. I think one of the problems that I ran into this year is I would get that positive or that negative regression, and the other side of the game wouldn't work out. A pitcher is supposed to get better. He does pitch better, but his offense doesn't support him at all. Then, of course, the bullpen blows it because every bullpen in Major League Baseball seems to have its problems here this year. Or I would bet on a guy that was in line for negative regression. It would come, but unfortunately, it would come for the other guy too. So, it's one of those things where I think circumstantially, I ran into a lot of bad luck this season. But again, like you said, you're betting on this expectation of regression, and there are different degrees of regression as well. A guy with a 3 ERA and a 5.15 FIP, yeah, he's going to get worse. There's no question about that. But also allowing 3 runs over 6 innings is a 4.50 ERA, which is technically regression. So that was the problem that I kind of found this year, is that I was never really able to pinpoint the degree of regression to which that individual start was going to have. And that is the inherent problem with, betting on positive and negative regression. So it was just one of those years where it didn't work out. The juice ball certainly didn't help, and some of the other factors that are out there. But, that's the thing is, I think that one of the most interesting things about handicapping baseball is that there are so many different ways to go about it, because there's just, when you talk about sports statistics, no sport can really hold a candle to baseball in terms of the data that's out there. That's why I think it's interesting that you've really tried to capitalize on the strikeout props that are out there, and you've had tremendous success with those.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I incorporate sabermetrics just like anybody, and everybody should. That is really, depending on your level of handicapping. I just don't want to get lost in it, and so it's a tool for the tool belt. It's a box to check, but it's just not the end-all, be-all to do that. But on the other side, man, K-props, yeah, really the next evolution of kind of what I was trying to do when it comes to my baseball handicapping. And again, before that, 99% of my plays were first 5, outside of some full game trends. But when it came to them, I was always kind of doing them a little bit here and there. But, when you come to this, you look at these formulas, and again, with everything that's out there, keep it simple. Look at teams' K percentage. For the season, you can look for the second half. You can do it on, by the first half. You can split it up however you want. and look to attack those teams with guys that you know are high volume strikeouts. It's really, there is kind of a specific formula that I'm not going to kind of give out there for the exact, quote unquote model, if you will. But it's really very simple. And again, I kind of live by the keep it simple, stupid model when it comes to my handicapping, because I think that you can overanalyze and really, paralyze by overanalyzation, if you will. And you can kind of do that the whole season. And you look across the league. I mean, look, there's certain teams. I've talked to you about this so many times when we talk about kind of the Indians and the Twins division. One of the reasons I love the Twins is because they pretty much blatantly stole what Houston Astros year one did, which was retool their lineup. And even the Mets tried to do this to a degree, but they basically came up with a lineup that is on base power, on base power, on base power. Repeat that, and you look for guys who do not strike out against right-handed pitching, because obviously you're going to face more righties over the course of a season than lefties. It's just how it's going to work out. And so when you build your lineup around that, it's built to do, to not strike out, to get on base. They're trying to write the sequel to Moneyball when in Tampa when it comes to that, type of thing as well. But teams are constructing their lineup in a specific way. And, as a handicapper, you need to know every single market that you can use that to your advantage. And, when Tampa and even Oakland to a degree first started using an opener, the first inning prop for yes, no runs was still being priced as a -110, even though Yarborough or Stanek or whoever it was going out there and giving you 3 free outs, and you were really paying for, the market was telling you to pay for 6, but you were really only having to sweat out 3 when it came to Tampa. So the K props are really the same thing. I mean, you look down the line, Houston, and I'll give you just the kind of the right-handed version. Angels are the best in the league against righties and not striking out at about 15.3%. Houston number 2 at 17%. And so if you have a guy with a low strikeout, or maybe a guy who is striking out a lot, you're going to have inherently value to go under that type of strikeout prop. And on the other side, going over on some of the worst teams like that, depending on, the K through 9. And again, I keep it really, really simple when it comes to all this stuff, and it comes for the K prop market. It was just really the next logical evolution to kind of, take advantage of some very simple stats that are out there.
One of the other things I noticed about Major League Baseball this season, and this is something that it's hard for me to hop on board with, because again, I'm so deep into the advanced metrics, and a lot of them do require pretty significant sample sizes. But I've found this year, and I've really found this, I think, across a lot of sports, it feels like short-term streaks are so much more prevalent than they used to be. I noticed it in the NHL last year. I've noticed it in the NBA as well. And now this year, I think I noticed it more in Major League Baseball than I previously have, where the good teams will win 6 in a row, lose 3 or 4 in a row, win 5 in a row, lose 3 in a row. And then they just accumulate a good record based on that, where I don't really remember that being the case all that often, previously. I don't know if this is the parity of the league. I don't know if this is just the way that the league kind of runs now with 162 games, but I feel like hopping on short-term streaks has been more profitable than ever.
Yeah, man. Again, it goes back to, kind of what you want to do, or, your thought process when it comes to handicapping. And, short-term streaks largely mean nothing to some guys, and they mean everything to some guys. And I largely, you can call it a streak, you can call it a trend, you can call it whatever it is. I have, basically a thought process that no matter what the positive indicators are for regression or the negative ones, until something stops being profitable, why am I truthfully, why do you really care is what it comes down to. If something, the Blackhawks over comes to mind. Look, there's a couple out there, right? Strasburg on the road is absolutely absurd for the Nationals. Full game trends, meaning that Washington is 28-3 in his last 30 starts. Games that Kershaw starts, the Dodgers are whatever it is, 30-4 or whatever this year. And it's, these absurd trends that don't really make sense yet, there's, every indicator in the world is telling you that Dakota Hudson should not be that good, right? I get it, but yet you look up and St. Louis is 18-3, I believe, or something crazy like that in his starts this year. So I am all about the long-term trend plays, but here's what happens. General public, when it comes to trend betting, inevitably they see it, some outlet will post this betting trend and people think, oh my God, inevitably it's obviously going to lose, because that's the way that the world works when you bet a trend for the first time. And then people forget it exists and they don't come back to it and bet it for the rest of the year and, take that loss, not knowing the next 4 times that trend was applicable, they didn't bet it. So you have to be disciplined and have a long-term approach more than anything, especially long-term and short-term.
All right, so we'll transition away from Major League Baseball here. I want to pick your brain about some college football stuff. I know you've been hard at work on preparations for that. Obviously, we've been unloading a ton of content over at bangthebook.com and talking about it a lot here on Bang the Book Radio as well. What does your setup look like for college football? I mean, do you do the traditional power ratings route? How do you sort of get ready for the season?
No, man. I mean, yes and no. I'm not the traditional old school power numbers guy. And if it's often this, it's definitely this. I really have more of the niche market view, a lot of totals, a lot of first half totals, and stuff like that, a lot of in-game stuff as well. And when I feel like I have an edge, man, what I do is look to exploit it in every market that I possibly can to diversify it. So look, if I see an obvious mismatch on the board for the week, instead of just betting it, and it's a big spread, we can say it's minus, let's just say 35 for argument's sake. If my numbers, higher or lower, whatever it is, as long as it's comparable. But I really feel that it's, such a mismatch in every single area when it comes to how I've handicapped that game. How else can I, diversify that, right? Well, I think, all right, starters are going to play the first half, so let's talk about a first half team total over. Then let's look at the first half over. If I do think that the mismatched team, they're awful on defense, but they can put up some points. And then let's look at the team total over, both first half. Let's look at the second half team total over when it comes out, and let's look at the full game one. And so it's a way to really diversify your position. And yeah, you could get, quote unquote reverse middled and make your day a lot worse by quote unquote going all in. And I'm not saying to max bet every single thing that you think you have an edge in, but diversify your position a little bit rather than going full stake on just this and you get a backdoor touchdown and now your day is ruined on that game, right? So I really look at kind of the specific stuff that I can really exploit, and I eliminate that variance, man. That's why I'm such a big fan of the team totals, because instead of one team versus one team, at least from the very least, I know player props largely not available in the college football market, of course, but at least you're breaking it down to just one team, 11 on offense instead of 11 on defense, 11 on offense, special teams, what the other team is doing, and sweating out and over when you're largely just trying to make things as simple as possible is always going to be my overarching theme when it comes to handicapping.
Now, I guess my follow-up question would be from a bankroll management standpoint. Let's say that, a lot of people bet whatever one unit is for them on a college football game. So if you're looking at, really doubling, tripling, or quadrupling down on your position by playing all these different types of derivatives that have a correlation to how you handicap the game, are all of those individual plays one unit, or are they fractions of a unit that wind up adding up to one unit on the game?
Yeah, it's probably, look, man, I think that the word unit is after value and the word sharp, the most misused term in this industry. And now, what is a unit? A true unit is 1% of your bankroll. And there's different, some people think it's, 1 to 5, whatever your scale is, right? But here's the problem with that. On a $10,000 bankroll, 1% is $100. And not to create illusions of grandeur here, but for people that think that they can just kind of roll into this market and make their mark and get rich, you're not going to do that if you're using the right quote unquote way to bankroll, manage your bankroll in that regard. And so people are inevitably end up doing is you're betting 5 to 10 units per play, but you're not even realizing that you're doing it. You just think that that's what you want to bet per game, but you don't have the bankroll to sustain that over the long term. So people really get in trouble because they don't really know what a unit is. But when it comes to that specifically, man, yeah, I use a little bit more than 1%. Obviously, I'm looking for limit bets, and that's not to sit here and tell you I'm this or that. That's just the truth of professional betting. And so I really kind of blended a little bit. If I had a first half team total, if I had a first half over and a full game, and then came back on that first half spread, it'd probably be about 33% of the full position on each one.
So, is this something where, it sounds to me, and obviously you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it feels like you're looking to handicap half the game, where in the sense that the side that you like is what you want to handicap, and then you're going to go with that as opposed to playing side, playing total for both teams, stuff like that. Is that something that, that you've evolved from, or was that always kind of your starting point of, I'm going to look at what I think is my strength in this game and really try to maximize it?
Yeah. Look, it comes with, again, there's levels to this. And when you have all the outs you can kind of put your day trading hat on a little bit. And again, that is kind of down the line when it comes to people in the handicapping absolutely not did I kind of start that way when I was starting out. I did everything that a recreational bettor did when I was starting out. I was putting in the parlays. I've told this story a couple of times, man, just to give people perspective that if you think that I always came out of here and never made mistakes. I literally remember, I don't know, I don't want to give you no free ads here, but I went to a specific website and looked at what the general public was on the head bet splits for college. I believe it was college basketball. It might have been college football, though. And I would look and it would say 72% on this on a little graph. And when I was like my first couple, times starting out, I used to think, man, how can all of these people be on the same side, man? Like, all of these guys, 50,000 Elvis fans can't be wrong, right? So I would literally just bet with the public thinking, how are all of these people going to lose? Everybody would be broke. And so if you don't think that I've made every single mistake along the way, and that's the thing with this, man, only the game can teach you the game. And much like poker, there's only one way to learn it, and that's to lose, and that's to see what works for you. And as you go through, you really can find what your, strengths are and what markets are and all that type of stuff. And you can kind of live on those markets and live on those quote unquote crumbs. Once you really, the thing is once you spend so much time in niche markets, you'll find that the odds makers are not spending all this time in niche markets. Think about it. They have to hang totals. They have to hang team totals, second half totals, over, unders. I mean, you name it. First quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter line, in-game lines. There's no possible way that single thing could be as sharp as it needs to, and algorithmed out as clear and crisp as it needs to. So it's just a way to find inefficiencies in the market using other markets.
So when it comes to a sport like college football here, it sounds like largely a lot of the work that you do is matchup dependent. So how much summer work do you do? Or is this a situation where you handicap these games on an individual level week by week, looking for those perceived inaccuracies in that derivative market? I mean, how much research do you do leading up to the season?
Yeah, this conversation, man, always fascinates me because think about this, both college football and NFL. We go from when the first college football lines are posted or the NFL, we have longer, really, probably 3 or 4 months to handicap those. Yet, so now we have 3 months to do all this for week one. And then directly after that first Saturday or that first Sunday, we turn from 3 months of handicapping into 6 days, basically, not even in some cases, 5 days, whatever it is, if there's a Thursday game. And so, even less Tuesday if there's a MAC game. And so it's always fascinating to me that people spend all of this time specifically handicapping week one as if it's any different just because lines have been out for longer. And it makes not a lot of sense to me to put that much time and effort in, especially if you're going to do what 99% of people do, is throw everything that you just handicapped away because an outcome didn't go your way, week one. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense to specifically spend so much time on week one when it comes to football. It's more a narrative. It's more the overarching theme that I want to dig into, the coaching staff, if there's new ones, if there's a scheme change. I mean, you look at a team like Georgia Tech coming in. Do I really care what happens week one? I mean, yes or no, if I do feel that is, a specific matchup, but more of my handicap in the offseason is the fact that a team like that is going, they're taking the triple option out of their offense, yet every single player on scholarship on that team, largely besides true freshmen, were recruited to run the triple option. So it's a team I'm going to look to, first fade, but then I'm also going to look into the futures market and look towards, their under or whatever it is because of the narrative of who is on that team, the staff, what they want to do, and the personnel they have to run that. You look at a team like last year with Scott Frost coming over, didn't have his guys. Chip Kelly coming back didn't have his guys to run his system. Now they do, and you've seen the win total, oh my God, bump up to 8.5, I believe, for Nebraska. UCLA a little bit still more manageable, but it's just crazy. And to me, it's more narrative. Are the guys fitting into their scheme rather than handicapping week one for 3 months and then focus and then only being able to handicap week two for 6 days or less?
So I guess a follow-up question would be then, is it more about observation than research? Or am I off track there? I mean, obviously you have to do the research before you lock in a play, but it seems like in the off seasons, it's just all about observation for you.
Yeah, really it is, man. I mean, look, I'll handicap the week one matchups when they come out, and because they'll move a lot, and you can create arbitrage, you can create middles, you can do a lot of things just because a number is one way, despite how you feel about it. And so that area of it does come into play when I'm just trying to number grab to set up positions for the upcoming season. For sure, you can do this with games of the year, all this type of stuff. But for me, like you said, it's largely, I don't want to see observation as if I'm sitting there looking at film, but it's just a different type of handicap, looking at the the season as a whole and what I do expect, and looking to see, are they going to outperform their market expectation or underperform it due to whatever is going on with that specific situation, whether it's scheme change, coaching change, sanctions, all that type of stuff is more my handicap in the offseason rather than just focusing on week one against the spread, this team minus this many points against this team.
Now, obviously, college football is different, 130 teams. Do you apply, these same concepts and thoughts to the NFL, where there's only 32 teams and really a lot less variance on a game-by-game basis?
Yeah, man. The NFL is really, really different. And again, this is where I differ from a lot of professionals that are going to gravitate towards the underdogs. They're going to gravitate towards the quote-unquote value. Let me tell you this, man. Basically, the last 4 years, the spread has come into play in the NFL 1.8 times per week, 18% over the last 3 years. What does that mean? Basically 2, so 1.8 times per week. So basically 2 times per week, the spread matters. Meaning when an underdog covers, they win the game outright 88% of the time. When a favorite wins, they cover the spread 88% of the time. And so in a world where people want to move men, women, and children to get the best half point of a number, yet they won't spend the time to live bet a spread that is 7 to 10 points off just because they have recency bias of what their eyes are telling them. I think it's a little bit backwards. And so I adjust to the market, man. And I've always maintained you can learn so much more about sports betting and sports handicapping from trading stuff, books on finance, than you can a box score. I really truly believe that. And it comes back to the bet numbers, but don't bet teams situation. I get that, but I'm just not as traditional when it comes to the power number stuff. I really look more in game and look to get numbers so differently. And just because a team runs an opening kickoff back, this team that was now -7 is now a pick, but people don't spend the time to go into that game, live bet it for in basically I don't want to say free teaser league, but you have 7 points best the number. Who wouldn't love closing line value like that? So I'm just a little bit different in the way that I go about it, rather than raw numbers and regression and all of that. I really look to just play the market against itself almost in a lot of ways.
Well, it's always good here to get a lot of different opinions on Bang the Book Radio each week, and some good food for thought here as always from Christian Pina. Christian, we usually come on here and talk UFC, but since we did some college football and some MLB stuff here today, I want you to let people know what they can get over at your CP Sports website.
Yeah, man, cpsportsinc.com is the website. The 75-page ebook is out there. We have contributions from some of the best minds in the industry. Fabian Sommer. We have Spread Investor. James Alberino is also on there doing contributions. Whale Capper. So it's really a narrative-based kind of 2019 season outlook. Every single future that I have placed already is on there. And it's, the why is always going to be more important to me. And that narrative kind of based handicapping is really what has led me to be so successful in the futures market and really kind of seeing things before they happen. And again, I don't want anybody to get it twisted that they think I have this secret script or I think that all games are fixed. I think there's things that numbers and your eyes can't necessarily, account for. That's the mental aspect of these type of futures and comparing them when it comes to what we have already seen and things like that. So kind of gives you a look behind the curtain into what goes into my everyday handicapping and 75 pages of what I believe is some of the best content I've ever put out there. So I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, and you can always follow Christian on Twitter at Christian Pina, Pina. Christian, always a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll talk some UFC again next week.
All right, man. We're back at it, and if you ever want to get back on the baseball grind, you know where to find me, man.